we really want to just do this for the betterment of the industry and help women get a bigger seat at the table, not to take away from men, but we think clients will be better served. The whole industry will be better served with more representation.
Yeah. And what we have seen over the last year and change, right, when we started in the fall of 23 is really we have built a community. And that for us from the very beginning was the most important thing. Hi there. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Leah Alter.
And I'm Joanna Erisman.
And this is WomenShare, a celebration of women in financial services.
And today's an exciting day because New Year's Day happens to also fall on WomenShare Wednesday. So it's January 1st. Happy New Year to you, Leah.
Happy New Year, Joanna. I hope everyone had an amazing holiday season. We're so grateful to have you tune in today, and we're excited about what's ahead for the show in 2025. A lot more great guests, great episodes, and we're bringing you today some of our top moments through 2024. It was a really exciting year.
It was. When 2024 started, WomenShare was only a few months old. We launched in September 2023. And reflecting back on why we started the show, our whole goal was to give women in the financial services industry, where women represent far less than half, closer to a quarter of all the professionals in this space, we wanted to give women a platform. And so when Leah approached me with the idea about the show, it was a clear yes in terms of our passion around supporting women. And when we first started, because Leah, you and I are marketers and we had such deep career experience in the marketing space, we launched the show to be focused on marketing best practices as well as career stories. But as we recorded and got into producing WomenShare, we quickly found that our most meaningful and poignant conversations and moments on the show weren't necessarily marketing focused.
Yeah. That was such a kind of light bulb moment, and I was feeling it, you were feeling it, and you came to me and were like, I have this idea. And it was just like, yes, this is the natural sort of progression. So we broadened the theme of the show because it was really about celebrating the women in the financial services industry. So we went from a marketing guide to a celebration of women in the financial services industry. And that really has led to even more fantastic conversations.
Yes.
We really want to thank all of our guests who have come on. Joanna and I talk about it all the time, how proud we are of being able to host a space where people feel comfortable to come in and be authentic, be vulnerable, talk about some hard things, also celebrate some amazing things. And ultimately, it all benefits other women. And that really is what we are most passionate about, getting more women in the industry, keeping more women here, and avoiding some of those pitfalls that a lot of us have experienced in our careers.
100%. And I think it's the sharing of, what I've found anyway, is it's nice to hear that there's so many relatable moments, right? Where it's like, oh, it wasn't just me, right? As our guests are talking. So So this community is real. I feel like that we've built, which is so exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a few things to really celebrate. If you are a Spotify listener, you at the end of 2024, you got your Wrapped of what you listen to most and, all the artists that you spent way more hours than you would imagine ever listening to. But they also give us some really cool feedback as podcasters on the platform. And we saw some really cool growth in 2024. For the sake of transparency and being vulnerable, we want to share that with you guys. We are never going to be the biggest podcast, and that is on purpose, right? We know that we are talking to 25% of the financial services industry. We're really focused on the women in this industry. And we know that that means it's a smaller audience, but it is a powerful community that we've built. So Spotify told us that we saw 284% uptick in listenership this year.
Whoop, whoop.
413% more streams of the podcast episodes. We had 178% more followers. We have a 5-star rating on both Spotify and Apple. Thank you for those that have written reviews and give us rating. And one of my favorite things was that Spotify identifies your personality as podcasters, and they identified us as storytellers. And I mean,
love that.
that's so validating, right?
Right.
That is why we created this platform. So those were really, really fun stats.
Yeah, it was great to see the growth. And I think even outside of Spotify, because obviously we're on all podcast platforms, overall with the show, we've seen more than 4,000 downloads of our episodes, and our followers on LinkedIn among the show and us as hosts were north of 3,500, right? So it's just, I don't know. Well, Leah, to your point, we're targeting women in financial services, although we know plenty of men listen, and thank you for listening. You are welcome too. This was a passion project, right? We, for better or worse, don't have a business intention with the show. We're not looking to generate more consulting business ourselves. We really want to just do this for the betterment of the industry and help women get a bigger seat at the table, not to take away from men, but we think clients will be better served. The whole industry will be better served with more representation.
Yeah. And what we have seen over the last year and change, right, when we started in the fall of 23, is really we have built a community, and that for us from the very beginning was the most important thing. So, on that note, we have to thank and celebrate also the organizations and individuals that really helped us with our mission of continuing here on WomenShare. When we launched, to your point, back in 2023, this was self-funded. It was sort of a, let's throw some stuff at the wall and see what happens. We were excited about the idea. And because we are small and so specific about our audience, we have been incredibly fortunate to attract sponsors this past year that have really helped us keep going, quite honestly. And for transparency's sake, if it wasn't for the Catchlight and Extella and RFG Advisory and BFG Advisory and Fish and Associates, all of these people who believe in our mission and have sponsored us, we just a big, big thank you.
Yeah.
It really was a difference maker for us in 2024. And, when we're looking at 2025, we'll be really honest with you all. We are self-funded again. We're back there. We don't currently have sponsors, and we want to keep going. We hear you. We get the feedback. This is something that you guys are excited about too. And so we're asking you as our community to help us do that. So if you have ideas of organizations or individuals that you think would be a good fit for us, we would love to get that feedback. We'd love to hear your ideas. We want to keep going. We want WomenShare to be here and to keep telling your stories and keep having these important conversations. But we really need the community's help to do that.
Yes, well said. And what's been great in this whole process is the enthusiasm that we are hearing and feeling. And I'm trusting that this will be a big year for us. We're going to keep going. And we just want to thank everybody who's been listening, because that matters. And as we look at our sponsorship and funding in 2025, we'd love your support. So hit us up if you have some ideas.
Yeah. Hit your girls up. So in our reflecting back of 2024, we really want to share with you guys some of some of the moments that stuck out for us that we want to highlight. There were so many, just narrowing
so
them
difficult
down
yes,
was very hard. But, we want to share a few of those with you today, just to remind you of really the huge, vast of guests that we've had on here in terms of subject matter and backgrounds, and it just really says so much about the diversity that exists within our industry.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that was also one of our goals, is to have these multiple perspectives, right? So to start
Absolutely.
off, the first couple of guests we want to highlight on this kind of best of show, even though all of it was wonderful, but some of our favorite moments from 2024, we want to share perspectives of some folks who are just shining a light on something and what women face in the wealth management industry. So first, we want to bring you this clip. We had Dr. Julie Ragatz of Carson Group on in January 2024, and she was joining us to share the findings of their State of Women in Wealth Management report that had just been published at the time. The whole episode was just so powerful. I think, unsurprisingly, there were tears. There was a lot of real sharing of our stories. So if you haven't listened to the full episode yet, please go back and give it a listen. But yeah, we're excited to dig into this segment with Julie.
Absolutely. We had a hard time picking like even a favorite moment from this episode because there
Right.
were so many. But we wanted to look back on the conversation that we had with Julie about the theme that emerged from their study about women and forced entrepreneurship in the industry, something that was very personal to both Joanna and I. And really like wasn't finding it in a corporate structure, so left to create them for ourselves, each other. So let's take a listen to that.
But one of the things we talked about in the research study was this kind of forced entrepreneurship, this notion that women come into these spaces and they're like, yeah, maybe I don't want to eat what I kill. Maybe I don't want this to be the year of execution, which kind of frankly sounds, sort of violent,
Yeah.
I want to create a cultural space in which I feel comfortable and where I thrive. And I can't find that. So I'm going to go build that somewhere else. And I think that that's certainly what we've seen women in the rise of, as you guys know better than I do, right? The rise of female focused business, oriented business, the rise of RIAs that have a different cultural feel to them has been a response to that.
That definitely jumped out and resonated with both of us, that trend of, while women starting their own business and female entrepreneurs are absolutely something to celebrate, there is that dynamic where sometimes there's that forced entrepreneurship in order to have a healthier environment. That just gave me pause. And honestly, like, it seems clear now, but I hadn't thought of it that way, as to why women might be starting their own practices or, branching out. So I feel like that's really insightful. And we've talked about the fact that, not everybody has the privilege of being able to do that. Right. So what did your study find along those lines, of any other dynamics of women striking out to start their own thing?
Well, I think what was really interesting is that I was not expecting this in the study. This one of the fun things about a longitudinal study is that, year over year, you do see different things emerge in the data. And so for us, this was a novel finding. This came up early in our interview data, with women kind of talking about their experiences. And so we were able, this great research team I work with at Carson was able to kind of do some digging on outside research to kind of talk more about that concept and fleshed it out for us as a construct to understand. So our research didn't tell us very much other than that it exists. And I think what we're excited about next year is to kind of drill down more on that and, maybe be more specific in our sampling of trying to find female business owners, and to talk a little bit more to them about their reasons for doing that. What I think we were able to figure out, though, just from the background research, forced entrepreneurship is not a concept unique to the financial services industry. It's, common in other industries too, certainly the tech industry. But to your point, Joanna, and this is where I think it's troubling, although exciting, and something that we want to applaud and encourage, is that this is a difficult industry to strike out on your own in. The amount of overhead, the amount of support, the amount of knowledge, frankly, you need to be able to start off your own practice, the amount of financial support you need from other sources as you build your own business, makes this very much an opportunity for folks who are, have resources, or a partner who has resources. And that, I think, is troubling. We want to say it, that there's a marketplace for dissatisfied people, right? That they can go out and build their own thing. I think we underestimate the costs of that. it would be far better to have more environments in which people felt comfortable than forcing everyone who didn't feel comfortable to go and kind of multiply their own kind of new thing to feel like they can do their job well.
Well, and even I think this study and these sorts of conversations will maybe help to empower people who are feeling uncomfortable to broach those conversations, right? And bring it to light. Like Leah, you said, we have to bring these things to the fore in order to have some progress. So interesting.
And Joanna and I both had sort of light bulb moments when we were reading the findings of that research, being two women who struck out on their own this year, right? That was exactly our experience, which is kind of done trying to, square peg this corporate life. And we're going to go try to create something that inspires us and where we can truly serve the type of clients we want to serve and do the work we want to do without the noise. Because I don't think either of us were in a situation where we didn't enjoy our work. And I think that was like the big kind of, light bulb moment. We both loved the work we were doing. We love the work we're doing now. But it felt forced. It felt like I'm kind of in a situation where I have to make a decision at this point.
The discussion with Julie just still gives me goosebumps. And listening back to the episode, I just adored that conversation so much. And we can't wait to hear Kallsen is doing the State of Women in Wealth Management study again in 2025. And we are already working with them to make sure we're sharing those findings with y'all. So we can't wait to share more about that when it comes out.
Absolutely. And speaking of insightful and relatable, for our next clip of the women in the industry sharing experience, we just had to share part of our session with Atricia Roberts from Curo Private Wealth. This was also one of my favorite conversations. I was so fired up after this episode.
Yes. Atricia joined us on WomenShare in July 2024. And first of all, she just has a super interesting career story, so again, listen to the full episode. But this particular portion is where Atricia shares like her very candid and just very clear and I think passionate response about change in the industry and why she's so passionate about seeing us do better as an industry as a whole. So let's take a listen.
And then when you ask about what I've seen change, honestly, I think it's been slow. And it's been slower than necessary. I mean, because I think about 20 years ago, I was showing up at conferences as the only Black female advisor in the room. There are times when I show up at conferences now as the only Black female advisor in the room. But what I have noticed is that there have been at least steps taken by many organizations, specifically like the Certified Financial Planning Board is making a really big push into diversity and trying to introduce advisors from underrepresented backgrounds to the planning industry. So I do think that people are starting to wake up and realize that we've got to do something different to make the change move a little bit faster, because I would love to see the next 20 years be very different from what the last 20 years has been.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious to hear how did you get reconnected so you said you moved, so you're in the DC area, Baltimore area. So what was that connection like to bring you back to the industry?
Yeah. So funny story. And I think it probably goes into why I'm passionate about mentorship. But when I came to the area, it was originally with a job offer with a nonprofit. And I decided not to take it. Nonprofit is hard work, right? It takes an emotional toll. Yeah. And I was like, I miss numbers. So I went back into banking. I worked at Bank of America for a few years. And it was at Bank of America where I met the founder of my legacy practice. And he was my client on the bank side. So he had no clue that I had a background in investment management. He was in my office one day and he asked me, he said, Atricia, are you looking for a job? And I told him, I said, well, you're at my job currently. we're here at my current job.
I don't do this just for fun. I love numbers, but this is not a hobby.
Right. But he did say, he's like, I really, and again, I knew what he did. And he was like, I think you would be wonderful in this industry. You're so good with clients. And it was at that point when I told him, I said, well, I actually have done that before, right? I worked at Merrill. He had no idea before we had that conversation. He handed me his card and he said, if you have any interest in getting back, give me a call. I said again, I was like, no, I can't do it. I won't do it. And it was actually my sister who was like, just call. What's the worst that could happen? And I called, and he's got a charismatic, persuasive type way. And I think it was probably less than 3 weeks that I accepted the position, put in my 2 weeks notice, and changed over from Bank of America to back to this industry. And that was in 2017.
Wow.
And that was Bernie, right?
That was Bernie.
Wolf?
Yeah. So Bernie Wolf. So the current iteration of our practice, Ann and I, is the merger of two firms. Of course, the one that Ann started in 2014. And then I am the successor of a legacy practice that Bernie Wolf founded over 40 years ago. So it was because of him that I was pulled back into the industry. It was a lot of his mentorship then that helped to build the confidence I needed to show up in the space, because it had never been an issue about not knowing, right? I knew theoretically how to be an advisor. I think what is important is knowing that you can do it, that you can be that clients will trust you when you show up in front of them. And I credit Bernie with coaching me and mentoring in that way to help develop the confidence I needed to be able to do this business and approach it in a way where I could show up and be comfortable authentically as who I am, and not trying to tie myself up in knots to try to be something different. And he was very open and honest in saying, I think that you being different is an asset. And the sooner you see it that way, the better off you'll be. And I just began to embrace who I was and what I brought to the table that was different from everyone else, that clients had the opportunity to work with. So it was definitely career changing, but in a lot of ways, life changing. Don't tell him I said that though. Because again, it helped me not just from a professional perspective, but even from a personal level to just learn to be comfortable in the skin that I'm in. And I think women often sometimes we want to dim our light and we sometimes make ourselves smaller. And I think learning to lean into being a woman and even lean into that femininity, right? If I want to wear a suit with flowers on it because that's the way I'm feeling today and it's spring, then that's what I'm going to do. And I do credit Bernie with a lot of being able to provide me with helping me gain that confidence.
Well, and they say too, right? The best way to love someone is to just encourage them to be 100% authentically themselves.
Yeah, I love that.
And when that happens, whether it's in a personal or a professional relationship, you see that over and over again where somebody blooms into their full expressive self and brings so much more to the table. Again, both professionally and personally. That is, I literally got goosebumps when you told the story. So I love that, because the first story you told, I'm not gonna lie, I started to get a little choked up. It's like heartbreaking to hear stories like that. And I know, unfortunately, that your experience is shared by a lot of people in the industry. And thank you for coming on here and talking about it.
Oh, of course. Thanks for having me and allowing me the platform to talk about it. And again, I don't feel I love this business because I see the power in what we do and the change we affect in people's lives. And because of that, I feel like I need to be critical of it, right? In the same way that you would discipline, a child or someone because you want to correct behavior. It is important to me that we call out the things that hold the industry back, because there's so much more opportunity and so much bigger of a difference we could be making if we just as an industry opened our arms and embraced the diversity, not just from a racial and ethnic background, but even just allowing more women into the industry. I mean, Ann and I, as a woman-led firm, we're still in the minority in this business.
Sure.
So there's a lot of change that still needs to happen.
Yes, this episode was just so good. Atricia was so open and forthcoming and vulnerable, really talking about this experience on a bigger platform like that. I think we all learned so much from her and her experience and that desire to do better, like you mentioned. So that conversation, she also mentioned the Certified Financial Planning Board's diversity initiative, which was like a perfect kind of foray into a conversation that we had with Terri Kallsen from Rise Growth Partners.
Yeah. So, in addition to Terri's role at Rise Growth, she has been on the CFP board of directors for years and is the incoming board chair, actually, for the CFP board overall. So, that was fun to celebrate with Terri earlier in 2024, the announcement that she was the incoming board chair. Overall, she just has a huge passion for this industry. And she was able to share with us some of the data from the CFP board's actual stats of who's passing the exam and what percentage of, CFPs are diverse and that sort of thing that actually helped to give us a lot of hope for the future of this industry. So let's take a minute to hear what Terri has to say.
So you've held very senior roles in your career across various institutions. So we'd love to hear your thoughts, as you reflect back of your years being in the industry, how far we've come and, where you'd like to see things go, especially in regards to women in the industry.
Well, I'll start with your last question first. Okay. We definitely need more diversity in the industry, and clients expect it, right? I mean, in every organization I've been in, some women only want to work with men. Some women only want to work with women. Some men, honestly, only want to work with women, and because they don't necessarily want the type of dynamic that sometimes happens in competitive situations, right?
Sure.
And so men and women both have the opportunity to choose their advisors. So we need to make sure there's enough. And it's not just gender, it's personality, it's expertise, it's whatever, geographical preference, wherever they are. There's many combinations, but our role in this industry is to make sure that clients always have choice. And so it's not just because we want to fill a quota or we want to check a box or we want to make sure that everyone knows this is important. Clients expect it, and we as an industry need to respond. Now, I think we're making progress. And Lee, I'll just share, I'm on the CFP board, and I love my work on the CFP board. It's all volunteer, but the CFP board has made this such an important component of the entire staff and the entire organization. They are paid on the number of CFPs in terms of diversity overall. And today, in 2024, just in March, we just passed our 100,000 CFPs. So there's only 100,000 CFPs in this country. Like, that's shocking, isn't it?
That feels low, but yeah.
It feels very low, but progress.
Yeah,
progress,
right?
Yeah. And about a third of all advisors today are CFPs. So that's progress, but we need to get more. But here's the good thing. 24% are women. So it's not where it needs to be, but it's better than the industry average. But there was a 12% increase in women in this past CFP board test. So we are getting better at helping young people decide on a career. So that's where it starts, right? And, I have 3 kids, and when their high school event said career day, I'll just be honest, my son, had me come in and talk about my career. And then my daughters were like, well, could you talk about something else? They're like, my son was like, let's talk about CFP and everything. My daughter's like, maybe we could talk about all the work that you've done in, this or that. And I was like, because we don't get people young enough to understand what financial planning, what financial advice, what investments are. There's some stigmas associated with it. So we're breaking some of those barriers, Leah, very, very early in life. And now we're seeing more come through. And then they're finding the rewards of helping people achieve their financial goals. Yeah. And a lot of women really enjoy this because they get to a certain level and they have more autonomy in their role. They have more flexibility. They have, obviously they have monetary rewards, but they also have the biggest reward, and that's helping families achieve their goals. And again, that's what draws me into the profession. And I always am very careful about this. That doesn't mean everyone is wealthy. That doesn't mean everyone has $1 million of investable assets. What it means is they have certain goals. It might be around sharing their money through philanthropy, or paying for their kids' college, or ensuring their lives. And whatever that is, we get to be a part of those conversations.
I mean, with women like Julie, Atricia, and Terri in our industry, it really does highlight how many amazing women are aligned with the same mission of diversifying our industry. And I think a lot of times we think we're out on islands with these like passion things, but really there's just so many of us that are aligned and are doing things that are, moving the needle. And it just gets us so excited for all that's happening now and what's coming.
Yeah, that's so true, Leah. And the future is so bright. Yes, we've got a little ways to go as an industry, or a long ways to go, let's face it. But it does give me so much hope and optimism. And we also had a few guests in 2024 that were not necessarily in the financial services industry, but they had so many valuable insights to share that apply to women, no matter what their industry, but in the financial services industry specifically.
For sure. I mean, money is so tied to so many aspects of our lives that you don't have to be in the industry to understand that concept, right? So we were so excited to feature Shannon Schlotter, who is a life and career transitions coach. She joined us to share about how to really navigate big, major life changes, both for yourself, but also when you're working with clients who are navigating those big life changes. And we found ourselves, nodding along a lot. So let's take a listen to that part of the episode with Shannon.
And then the experimentation piece that I talked about, especially for my zingy lemon sorbet people. Like, we got to be in that mindset of, I'm a beginner again. I'm doing this thing that I've potentially never done before, or it's been a long time. I am going to have to try some stuff and see what works. I'm thinking of initial consult that I had this morning, where like that was the space that woman was in. There comes a point where we got to get out of the notebook and we've got to get into action a little bit. Yes. And I think what underscores all of that is restoration. Always, all the time. I'm a huge proponent. Like, how are we making sure that we're taking impeccable care of ourselves and that we're coming into this transition work of letting go, reflecting, experimenting with a full tank of gas? It's really hard to get a car moving again if it doesn't have any gas. So how are you doing a great job of keeping gas in your tank? Sorry, I'll pause there.
You're blowing my mind,
that
Shannon.
was amazing.
Well, and actually the last part of talk experimentation, Leah, I have heard, like, you were such a great coach to me about that, or giving me advice around what came to mind is you'd say, you can always make a different choice, right? Like when I was like, oh, we're starting this podcast and, and like, I was just so change averse, or, just in this in my head.
Well, and I think too, like when you can recognize that somebody is both excited, but also questioning or isn't sure about what that next move is, but you can tell that there's like a little bit of lemon zest happening.
Yes.
It's like, how can you hold space or create space for someone to be able to kind of work through it and talk through that, right? So like when I went to Joanna initially with the idea for this podcast, she was like, "Ooh, yes," but then there was a lot of "ooh, but wait," and she had to like work through that. And rather than me be like, here, let me list all the reasons why this is the best idea ever and you have to do it with me, I was like, okay, take the time. Let's talk about it. Come back, And when you give people permission to work through all of the things, then they find the answers themselves without feeling like they were led there.
Totally. Like, let's give some spaciousness here. Because they're messy, and like, it's not going to be perfect. I'm thinking of my daughter is really in a season of baking. I have a 9-year-old, you guys. And it's like beautiful to watch her be in the messy middle of like learning how to follow a recipe and read instructions. Like, it's going to be imperfect. And so can we be really mindful about surrounding ourselves or being the kind of person for someone who's going through mess that is okay with the messiness, that is okay with like, oops, honey, you put a tablespoon of baking soda in there. We only need a teaspoon. You know, it's like, no big deal.
Yeah.
Like, we'll figure it out. Can we surround ourselves with those kinds of people? And can we be those kinds of people for others?
Yes.
That's why I'm so passionate about this work to begin with, because I think our whole world needs a little bit more of these, frankly, like life skills. Like, they're life skills to know how to let go, reflect, restore, experiment. And the more we have that, the more we can all be a little bit more compassionate with each other in the mess.
You know, I think that specific conversation, part of the conversation with Shannon, is what really stuck with me the most in the last few months of the episodes that we have recorded. You know, of having this mentality of seeing life changes as experiments. That's been so helpful to me as a recovering perfectionist and long-term planner, right? That as I'm continuing my entrepreneurial journey and figuring out where I want to take my career, and even like with the show, right? Like, just bringing that mentality of experimentation and openness to what will come has been so powerful. So Shannon, we love you. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah. If you all have not heard that episode, that one could be like a big game changer, I think, in terms of shifting your mentality, you know, and not getting bogged down into in those day-to-day heavy changes and how that feels. Reframing that is, yeah, it's a life changer for sure.
Yeah. Required quarterly listening for me. I'm like, go back, listen to that.
Totally.
Remind me what Shannon has to say.
Yeah. This has been so fun reflecting on some of these moments. And like we said, there were a lot. So if you've missed any episodes from 2024, go back and listen to them. They live there and, you know, forever. So they're always available to you. And while no one is sugarcoating the fact that we have a long way to go in the industry, it does feel like we're bringing more balance. And it's just so encouraging and inspiring to see the work that people are doing to drive that change.
Yeah, and agree. Like, there's so much great work happening out there. And here on our show, I mean, we're just grateful to be doing our part and play our role in our little corner of the industry, as we like to say. And Leah, I just want to thank you personally for a great 2024 and inviting me to be your co-host on the show. It's been such a gratifying part of my life. So thank you.
Well, I'm not even going to say you're welcome for the thank you, but it's more like a thank you for saying yes and coming on this journey with me. I know I've said it a million times, but you were my co-host. So thank you for saying yes, because I don't know what would have happened if you said no. And thank you all for tuning in and listening and engaging with us here at WomenShare. It's because of you all that we continue to thrive and grow, and we're so, so grateful. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for being the community.
Well said. With that, that's our show for today. If ours is a mission that you want to share in, please subscribe to WomenShare on your favorite podcast platform. With that, I'm Joanna Erisman.
And I'm Leah Alter, and we will catch you on the next episode of WomenShare.